Welcome to Read This Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice Maria James, and I am so excited to have with me today the author of On a Move, Mike Africa Jr. Welcome, Mike.
Welcome, Mike. I'm excited to share your story. It's such an important story, and I remember it. I had moved to New York maybe a few years earlier, but because it has not been talked about, it's almost in the recesses of my mind. So I'm so happy to meet you. So I want to welcome you and thank you for writing the book. And I would love for you to introduce yourself and share a little bit.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I'm doing a lot of interviews right now, and I'm really happy to be doing this one right now. The reason that I wrote this book is because I felt it needed to be done. The MOVE organization has been around for about 50 years, and it wasn't a book I wanted to write, actually. There are many members that could have done this. Ramona Africa survived the bombing in 1985. My parents and seven other members of the organization from the original days of the 1970s that spent 40 years in prison, they could have written this book. But it's like the story of Dory Miller. I don't know if you're familiar with Dory Miller, but Dory Miller was a cook on a naval ship, a U.S. naval ship. And there was some commotion going on above deck. And he found the person that was supposed to be protecting the ship with the gun, with this person that was supposed to be on the gun, he saw under the table where he was cutting potatoes. And Dory Miller wondered who's on the gun. And he ran up above deck and he had to shoot down about 7 Japanese kamikaze airplanes that were trying to just destroy the naval ships in the area. Had he not, the naval ship that he was on and many others would have been at the bottom of the ocean. When they gave him all these awards for his bravery, people asked him, how did you end up above deck? Why were you the one on the gun? And he said, because it needed to be done. And that's why I wrote this book, because we have to tell our own stories. And for years, MOVE has been critical of the stories that other people told about the organization, yet they never wrote a book about the organization themselves. So I don't believe that I'm the most qualified out of all MOVE members to write this book, but I do believe that I'm the most qualified outside of MOVE that did. So that's why I wrote it. It's really simple. It needed to be done.
Well, as I was reading through the book, and which we'll talk about later, when I got to you freeing your parents, all I could see in my mind was you were born to free, So that was just like the thing that resonated. This child born in prison was born to free his parents. And so for me, I saw the need for you particularly to write this story, because the way things aligned for this to happen for you to do this is quite tremendous in and of itself. So
yeah, it's hard to believe it's true. And I like the way you put that, born to free. Like I was born in prison and not free, but I was born to free my parents from prison. I like that. I mean, I've never thought of it that way before, but I do like the way that sounds, because There was a lot of people that could have done what I did. Once I understood what needed to be done, it fit like a puzzle piece and it didn't feel hard. That's not right. It wasn't that it didn't feel hard. It's that it felt simple. Like push-ups are hard, even though they're simple, right? That's how it felt. Like it was a hard work, but it was simple to understand what needed to be done. And that, yeah, it was still hard. But I'm glad that that they that we were able to secure their freedom. And I do feel very proud that I was one of the main players in making sure that happened.
So let's start at the beginning, because first off, let's let people know what MOVE was, and then we'll talk about the bombing, because I don't want to assume that people know or even remember,
Right.
because I know and vaguely remember. So I would like to have just make sure the audience has clarification.
Okay. So the MOVE organization was founded by a Black man named John Africa. Philadelphia-based group. He started the organization because he wanted to protect life, people, animals, and the environment. And MOVE's activities included protests at the Philadelphia Zoo and at the police departments and, judges' houses. MOVE protested anything where they thought injustice existed. And so being the type of people that the organization comprised of, and being in a city where a very racist mayor by the name of Frank Rizzo was presiding, the clash of beliefs was tremendous. I mean, you remember January 6th when the Trump supporters stormed the Capitol? That was the kind of regular occurrence happening in Philadelphia, where MOVE members would storm courtrooms and MOVE members would storm Puppy Palace and the Philadelphia Zoo. And they were protesting against the injustice of animals being in prison. Like they would say things like, the same way Africans were brought to America in chains is the same way lions were brought to this country in crates against their will. Whether they fought or not, their parents, their families were killed. There were so many similarities in the animals being brought to America and put in a zoo to Africans being brought to this country and put into slavery. And so that's how MOVE's beginning was. And there were so many attacks and confrontations between MOVE and police that it landed MOVE in jail for years at a time. And those, what MOVE saw as unjust prison sentences, led to more protests and more jail time. And it culminated on August 8th, 1978, when Frank Rizzo sent his police officers to our house. They raided our house because they said we had housing code violations. They sent the fire department to shoot our house with deluge hoses. These hoses were powerful enough to shoot 10 stories straight up into the air. They were so powerful that they destabilized the foundations in buildings. Firefighters are trained to never use them on buildings that they know people are inside of, but they still use them on us in our house. The police shot hundreds of rounds of ammunition. And then when that didn't kill MOVE, they put smoke grenades and tear gas in the house. When MOVE people started to kind of come out of the house and work their way out because they couldn't breathe, they were then immediately arrested, and some of them were beat within an inch of their lives. And so during the melee, the shooting, a police officer was shot and killed. And of course, MOVE people were blamed for it. Even though there's so much evidence that point to the fact that MOVE people are innocent, they still were charged. And during that time, my mother was 8 months pregnant with me, and they were all put in jail and given 100-year sentences. 5 weeks after my mother's arrest, I was born in a jail cell.
Yes, the story of your birth in that filthy jail cell. Um, I remember turning on the taps in New York City and having brown water come out of it before you can actually get to clear water. If you never experienced that, then I actually flash back to being in college and having that happen. So I'm imagining your mom giving birth in a filthy prison cell with brown water. It just, it was something. It was a moment. That's the best way I could, because I know what it looked like. It was so clear in my head in your description of what that was. The things that I like about that conversation around your birth, and
Janet.
Janet, her proclamation of your birth really stood out to me when she was in the court. And originally, when I was reading it, I was kind of on the fence. Why is she making this announcement? But then when you get towards the end of that story, and you understand that you could have been lost in that system, they could have actually said that you never existed, right? That's why I say, as I read through it, I really saw that feeling of you were born to free, because the fact that your mother gave birth to you just with one other person, and that someone said, no, we're going to shout that he's here. We're not going to allow anyone to say something else happened. I thought that was a very powerful piece to put in there. Did you feel that way when you were writing it, or you were just telling the story?
When I recalled the stories about my birth growing up, I remembered certain things about it. And I had to go back and talk to the people that were there to either clear up some of the mismemories and give more context. Well, as a writer, you do a lot of research. A lot of research goes into informing people about things because, you don't know everything. So you have to do research to get things factual, and you have to cross resource through other people because some person might not remember it exactly the way that it actually happened. So you have to talk to other people and then kind of come up with a condensed version of it. So I had to talk to Janet about that day, and I had to talk to my Aunt Gail and Dee Dee, the people that were there. And as they all told me their perspective, every single perspective was equally powerful. Even though they had different vantage points, they had they had a different glance at things, or they had the same glance, but just from a different location. And it's one of those things where it's like your favorite movie. You can watch it over and over again. You never get tired of hearing about it. You never get tired of talking about it because the power in that delivery and how the people protected me from harm, from theft, from murder is something that really brings me to the acknowledgement of how powerful the family was in their quest to make sure that I was safe. So, yeah, it's very moving. And the way they would sing so that people didn't hear me crying, and the way they would march down the prison block, making sure that the racist guards didn't do anything, or that and then also the tender moments and trying to make sure that like some of the people that were missing their children, a lot of these women that were in prison with my parents, they were parents themselves. And so to see a baby in a jail, could you imagine that? You're away from your own babies for months. You don't know when you're going to see them again. In some cases, you are facing life in prison. You may never get to see a baby again. And here a baby is born on a block that you are housed on, and you get a chance to get so close to them that you can touch them, and they're the baby of a person that's been good to you and friendly with you and protective of you. It's I don't like to, I guess, talk too much about myself. I don't want people to think I'm some kind of conceited, pig-headed guy. But when I was going home, one of my uncles told me, he said, "Man, when they brought you home from the hospital, when they brought you home from the prison, he said there were 100 people at the house waiting for you, like the baby Jesus was coming home." And so it just feels very profound to me. And it's hard to believe it's true that it's me, for me. But I feel honored that people were so protective of me. I feel honored that my mother was strong enough to deliver a baby in a jail cell. And I feel privileged to be that person.
To not know what you were going to become and to see how the kind of payback, you delivered
It's hard
your
work,
mom.
but you know what? It's worth it.
So now let's move into the bombing and especially from a child's perspective, because you were a child when this happened.
6 years old. When my parents and the other MOVE members were in prison, the rest of the MOVE organization were campaigning to get them released. And so the activities shifted from protesting at Puppy Palace and the zoo to protesting at City Hall, pressuring the system to free the MOVE members. And the protests were so intense and sustaining, consistent. MOVE members strapped a bullhorn to the front of their house and yelled from it, cursed from it. What they were saying is they want their people out of prison. 9 MOVE people were in prison for a crime they didn't commit, and MOVE members wanted them home. And the system's response to that was to fly a helicopter over the house and drop a bomb. And when they did, it was with such malice in the way the city went about shutting MOVE up. Not only did they drop a bomb, but the bomb was wrapped. In order from the police commissioner, Gregor Sambor, the bomb was wrapped in shrapnel so that upon explosion, it would injure anyone in contact with fragments. Once the bomb ignited or detonated, it ignited a fire. And as the fire blazed, the fire chief decided to order his firefighters to let the fire burn. And as MOVE members tried to escape a burning building, they were shot by police. And the death toll at the end of it was 11 MOVE members were dead. 5 of them were children. And the MOVE 9, whom they had been fighting for 7 years, remained in prison.
And I have to take a deep breath just because to even try to wrap your head around the government bombing. I was living in New York City at the time, and I'm trying to envision what it would have been like to have I was living in Brooklyn, actually, to have a bomb, because the houses are kind of close together, same sort
They're
of houses,
connected.
and yeah, same kind of houses, Philly, Brooklyn, and to have a bomb hit a house on a block in which you live, I can't even begin to wrap my mind around that.
That fire reached 2,000 degrees, the temperature in which steel melts. And not only did it burn down Move's house, it leapfrogged across the street and burned down 61 other homes. And at the end of it, 250 people were left homeless.
What is it that you feel that you want people to understand about Move and what transpired from your book? What do you feel is the message?
I want people to know the story so that they can understand how to move and their own movements. You know, right now we're all awaiting the response from Illinois in the shooting death of Sonia Massey. And I can tell you that there's a law called qualified immunity that protects law enforcement and public officials from receiving punishment for their inactions and their misdeeds. And we've seen so many cases where police have shot and killed people. We saw Tamir Rice. It's on camera. The police officer shot Tamir Rice before he even stopped his car. The disappearance of Sandra Bland, the life that was just mysteriously snuffed out in a police station, the death of George Floyd. We have seen so many cases where police have just out and out killed people, murdered people, shot people, broke people's spines. And in many of those cases, there are zero repercussions. You know, if they say they feared for their life, then therefore that's a justifiable, what do they call it? A justifiable emotion. Philando Castile, oh, the list is long. And so in the case of Move, a bomb was dropped, 11 people were killed, 5 of them were children, and the only person that went to jail was the survivor. The police commissioner that put shrapnel in the bomb didn't see a day in jail, never wore handcuffs. The fire commissioner that ordered the fire to burn never saw a day in jail, never been in handcuffs. The mayor, Wilson Good, the commander in chief of the city, for that bomb being dropped, he has never seen a jail cell and he's never been in handcuffs. Even in 1995, when Ramona Africa, the survivor, filed a civil suit against the city for what they did and against those 3 individuals I named earlier, the judge dismissed their case and granted those perpetrators immunity. And what we're seeing right now across this country is a sweeping wave of police officers killing and people like these other politicians that want to protect them, saying there's never any justification for defending yourself against police. But what happens when you need defense and the police are the ones attacking you? What do we do? And if they can be granted immunity and be protected from by the law, by the system, then what is their incentive to stop killing us? So this book does a deep dive into the issue of move, but in the broader scope, this book is a puzzle piece within the broader construct of police brutality and organizational structures. It talks a lot about the infighting in Move that resulted in Move members spending more time in prison than they would have had they had a clear vision and been diligent about releasing the people. This book is also a love story. My parents spent 40 years in prison. And when they came home, I asked my dad, I said, hey, Dad, if you say you want anything, I'll make it happen. I don't care. You spent 40 years in prison and you deserve the world. But I can grant one wish. Tell me what you want. I'll make it happen. My dad said, Mike, I only want one thing. I want to marry your mother. He said, I want to marry your mother like I should have done 40 years ago. And so to know that they climbed through 40 years of barbed wire and shrapnel and bullets and grenades and tear gas and smoke grenades, they climbed through a house being torn down on them, fire hoses. They went through 40 years of eating junk and poison, and to come home from all of that and love still be the dominant factor in his mind. That's a very powerful story.
And I saw that was one of my notes, is the fact that it was a love story. It was a three-way love story, because although you weren't there with them, when you read this story, you see the love that you have for your parents. You see the love that your parents had for you, and you definitely see the love that your parents have for each other. And the way your father, like, it was almost, in reading this, I felt like your father's love was a bubble that he kept you guys in. It was almost like a safe place. And when you share that, what is it? We got the package or something like that.
Secure the package.
We secured the package, and that long, quiet moment that he couldn't speak, it just really felt like, okay, the package, like, I have two pieces of my package are together. Now it's just one more piece of the package. But I felt that love story. I genuinely felt that love story of 40 years in different prisons, and all you want is the best for your significant other. That was powerful in and of itself. But I want to talk to you about something, because you talk about your lowest point. And in reading it and seeing how, what your purpose, your divine purpose was, and you're getting to that point of your lowest point, but there is something that is telling you that's not your destiny. Can you just share with us about that low point and, going through it? Because
it's a constant struggle being from Philly in the inner city poor section. In West Philadelphia, born and raised, and we ain't had no palm trees. We didn't have a tree on our block. It wasn't roses, and you know what I'm saying? Like, it was the only grass you see is the weeds growing through the concrete. Coming from a place where drugs are in your community, in your house, and then also, like, being around people that you think have your best interests, and then to find out that some of the people that are supposed to be with you are absolutely against you and have been the whole time, it's hard to really bounce back from that. And the collection of all these things, when your parents are denied parole again, we are in year 10 and they've been denied parole again, and we don't know what to do. So there's this collection of all of these different things that just bring you down. And the only thing that really gave me the notion to keep going is my father. You talked about my dad's love kept us in like a bubble. Yeah, he's definitely the anchor, and reminder, and so going through those low points, having him there to say some deep wisdom that you didn't think could get any deeper, it was kind of the thrust that I needed.
There's two things that came to my mind too, is because in some aspect, move was a source of great pain for you and your family. Mm. But then as you go through and when you hit that low point, that rock bottom, move was also the same force that kind of felt like it started to propel you forward. Because you were searching for something, and then Ramona, she got out of prison, and you wanted to reconnect, and you were told, like, yeah, you need some of that philosophy right now. It was almost like you had started running on empty from what you have been taught, and you needed that kind of refresher course, or I think you said the University of Move.
Right. I was about to get a crash in Move University.
Move University. So I'm looking at it and like there was so much pain, but it was still your foundation. It was still the foundation. The foundation that caused pain was also the foundation that was a rocket ship to change who you could have become.
Yeah.
Had you not had that governing body.
I never thought of Move as being the source of my pain.
Okay.
My pain. I never thought of, I don't know what it is, but I always have been clear that people are people and a belief is different. It's how they say, I was talking to a Muslim friend of mine and he said the belief is perfect. No, the religion is perfect, but the people are not. It's like I kind of understood that innately all my life. I never believed that, even with all of the horrible things that happened to Move, I never believed that it was Move's fault, really. Of course, Move people could have made decisions that didn't land them in jail. Of course, they could have done things that maybe they could have come out of the house before the bomb was dropped and not been killed. But this is with hindsight, yeah, but we're dealing with a system that doesn't have our best interests at heart. And so once you get into the fights of it, you get into the throes of it. And that's no different than Dr. King or Malcolm X or the Muslims or whoever. So I always believed that the idea that Move teachings were valuable. I just had been taken away from them, but that was mostly due to people not getting along with each other. It had nothing to do with the belief system. So when my grandmother said, you need some principle, you need to go back to Move, I was delighted. I wasn't even thinking about a bomb was dropped 7 years earlier. I wasn't thinking that being in Move is what got your parents in prison. To me, my parents were like Harriet Tubman, trying to free people from slavery. My parents were like Rosa Parks, who refused to get up off the bus when they told her you got to get out of the seat. My parents were my heroes. So why wouldn't I want to be a part of that? Why wouldn't I want to learn more about that? We praise all of these revolutionary soldiers throughout history for their stance. And even though oftentimes they end up getting killed, they end up getting jailed, but we still praise them for the stand they took. Now, I have those people right here in my family. Why would I not want to be a part of that? If we can teach that at Black History Month and school books and all across the country, then I can learn that right there from the horse's mouth. So, hey, Grandma, thank you very much.
I got you. I felt that and I understood that completely because when and again, I'm glad I asked it as a question because when you're on the outside looking in, you feel it a different way, right? Not ever feeling like it was Move's fault that somebody dropped a bomb on them, not that, but to feel like, wow, that must have been devastating to experience that as a part of this group. But the way you reframed it, I love, is like, no, we were doing what we were supposed to do, and this was part of the repercussions of fighting back against, because the system was unfair, still is unfair, and by all accounts it will be unfair for a very long time to come.
Yes.
So I appreciate your insight, which to me, that was the most powerful thing there. My parents were my heroes. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And it kind of bugs me when people say that happened because they were protesting. That happened because people don't become revolutionaries at birth. They're born however they're born, and then something suggests a need for resistance. I've never known a person to, when you ask them what you want to be when you grow up, they say a revolutionary. And if they do say that, there's a reason they said it. Most people want to do something. They want to be football players. They want to be rappers. They want to be journalists or whatever. They don't want to be taking on the government. But, and then on the other side of that is, what was Sonia Massey doing? She wasn't protesting. She wasn't rebel rousing. She wasn't burning a police station. She didn't say F the police. She called them for help. And she ended up dead. And then the police officer that shot her calls her names and crazy and the B word and no regard or respect even for her after she's dead. And so this is why people turn Netflix off and go protest. They were perfectly happy Netflix and chilling, and then something suggested a need for them to turn the TV off and go march. And how could they be deemed as disruptive because of that? How is it that the narrative can be spent and shaped toward them being the people that need to protest peacefully? It is so angering for these people that create these problems to then, what they call it, gaslight us and have people thinking that we're the ones that are the problem because we shouldn't have been talking about these issues. We wouldn't be talking about these issues if these issues weren't issues. So I've always been clear about the fact that I know Move make mistakes, but there is never a mistake that they could have made that was worth dropping a bomb. Mistake that they could have made that was worth dropping a bomb.
Warranted that, yes. And one of the things that I have to give you your props for with the book is that you did not sugarcoat what happened. You did not sugarcoat that these are real human beings. They did things that, quote unquote, people might see as wrong or whatever the case may be, but the philosophy, the principle, their move, what they were moving for was a better philosophy than the one that they were subjected to. And that's the premise of everything that they did, is that they could not connect themselves to this philosophy that was destroying everything that they saw around them. And they had their own philosophy that they wanted to improve their environment. So, I mean, you did a really wonderful job with conveying the essence of what Move was about, because if we've been around more than 5 minutes, we know that the narrative always gets spun, right? Trayvon Martin, he's shot, but he's the blame. So we know that the narrative will always be spun. And if we don't tell our stories from our vantage point, then we hear our stories from somebody else's observation. So I am so happy that you told your story from your vantage point as a child, your vantage point as an adult, and your vantage point as somebody that was intimately connected with what was going on. And you were the right person to tell the story. You were the right person to tell the story.
I'm still mad about it, though. Still mad about it.
You were the right person to tell this story. I love the end, going towards the end of the book, where you're working to get your parents out of prison, and you know the obstacles that you have to contend with. You know the people that are problematic, and you are so strategic in making it happen. And I just wondered, do you contribute that to the philosophy and the teachings that you grew up with? Or was that something that you feel that you got in the heat of what was going on at that time?
I mean, how do I say this? I would love to take credit for the way I was moving. I was like a ninja. It was so stealth and strategic and precise. I believe I was guided by God. I really believe that was divine intervention. Like, I don't think I'm that smart. I would love to take credit for it, but I don't know if I'm that smart. The moves that I was making, it was like they were so natural and I couldn't miss. I was in the zone. Every decision that I was making. And then the hardest decision that I made was the hardest thing that I've ever done in my entire life. I'm 45, I'll be 46 in a month. The hardest thing I've ever done is visit with the mayor that dropped the bomb. I've never felt painfully ill. I've never vomited after a conversation before. I've never trembled at the thought of it. That idea, because he said he wanted to help, the idea to accept his offer, even though I know who he was, but the understanding that my father would do anything for me, I could not sleep at night if he died in prison and I didn't do everything I had to do to get him out, even if it meant I would be doing something that might eat away at my soul. So I've never I never would have accepted an idea like that in years past. I don't think I would have had the maturity or the emotional security. But to do that, and 15 meetings we had, and they led to his support and endorsement for my family's freedom. And that was one of many challenging aspects of Freedom to Move 9. Fighting with the people that were supposed to be part of my family that were interfering with their release, and the people in prison believing that they had their best intentions at heart. It was such a struggle, but I played it so smooth. It was such a struggle, but I played it so smooth.
You did. You did. I was like, look, that was just, and I know it had to be extremely hard because when things started happening and you want to shout from the rooftop, you know that everybody's not right. Everybody's not on your side.
Exactly. It was so, you know what? It was so important that I learned that lesson before they actually got the papers for release, because had I not known that before,
Right.
I might have told them, and they may have interfered some kind of way because they tried.
Right. Because I remember the story in the book where your mother's whispering because she doesn't want the others to know. And I'm like, wow. And and it's nothing against them. It's family, no matter who you are, you have family members that they love you, but on the same
not on your
token,
side.
they're not always on your side. So the fact that you were so strategic in doing that, and that your parents respected you in a way and listened to do this. You need to take classes. You need to do this. And they stepped up and they allowed you to lead them out.
Yeah.
You
took them by the hand. Come on, y'all. We out of here.
You were out of here. That was I don't want to say enjoyed, because I think that's the wrong word, but I appreciated your book. I appreciated the history lesson that was in your book, because this is current history. 50 years from now, people will read your book and say, wow, I can't believe that happened.
They'll say that can't be
true. That's so unreal,
If there's no documents of it, they'll say it's true. It's not true.
Yeah, but it's actually, for me, man, there was another thing that you had spoken about, which I often say, like, I kind of grew up with the Flintstones and the Jetsons, and I know life when it was more Flintstone-y to turn into Jetsons. So I can't even imagine your parents that didn't see the evolution of life going from Flintstones to Jetsons. They went in as Flintstones, they came out, and people were talking on a screen that was mind blowing, because I remember the Jetsons. I remember when phones became accessible where you could see on camera. And I was like, that was the Jetsons.
Yeah. The TV show called Dick Tracy.
Oh, yeah.
And you had to watch where you could see, right?
Yes.
And we have that now. That was, the time warp has been tremendous. I mean, imagine what things were like 40 years ago.
Yeah, I turned 61 in September. So I've come through this whole time warp. I get it. That's, as I said, I read in reading the book, and especially in reading your birth and in reading your freeing your parents, those two connections will forever be what I connect so deeply with the book, that and the love story of your parents. The history of Move, I believe, is something that should never be forgotten. They say the Holocaust should never be forgotten. This is one of these stories that should never be forgotten. But I don't want people to get lost or think that this is only about the bombing and this is about life and human beings and their experience, death, grief, love, knowledge. Everything was poured into this book, and I thank you for writing it in the way in which you did, because I wasn't sure what to expect when I start writing it, and I'm a bit of an empath, so I take things in deeply. But there were so many different things to take in till I did not feel overwhelmed by any one thing.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I think it's okay to say you enjoyed it, because I it's such a positive ending, and yeah, I mean, I enjoyed reading it. It was action. There was some serious action. I mean, the fact that it's real makes it feel maybe a little bit like insensitive to say I enjoyed it. I get it, but yes, but the perseverance part,
Yes,
the
the
accomplishment
resilience.
part,
Yes.
the reunion part.
Yes, yes.
I think we
So
can say we
yes, that's
enjoyed that.
why I feel like I enjoyed it, because I was so celebrating with you guys. And when you were on pins and needles, waiting for the countdown and trying to keep everything a secret, I'm there at the edge with you. And when she walks out the door, and all of those things were made the story so enjoyable. The love story, the triumph, the ending. Yes, yes.
Yes, because I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, it was wonderful. I thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me and share your story. It's so impactful. It is so impactful. And I am so thankful that you were obedient. And I do believe your life was divinely orchestrated, just because it had to be. So many things could have went wrong, and they all worked together to get you to this place. So it is my honor and privilege to meet you and talk to you.
Well, I see you at the Harlem Book Fair.
Yes, you will. I will
Can't wait to meet you in person.
Same here. Same here.
Thank you for the time
so
today.
much.
I really enjoyed this interview.
I'm glad. Thank you. We will talk again.
I can't wait.
I would like to thank my special guest, Mike Africa Jr., the author of On a Move. His book goes on sale today. Please go out and pick up a copy. This has been Read This, Author's Corner. I am your host, Alice Maria James. Keep reading, keep growing, and stay empowered. Until next time.